The pupils of Class 6M had, quite frankly, disgraced themselves. During the routine fire alarm test, instead of standing neatly in line with the other boys and girls at Blackrod Primary School in Bolton, this lot had been hanging over the fence and larking about. A few might even have been, whisper it, plotting a cigarette break. The punishment was a ticking off. The head teacher tore a strip off us, says a chastised lad called Bill Bones. He said we were the worst class in the school. Reception and year 1 were better behaved and we should know better. As the oldest pupils in the school, they really should have known better, given that their average age was 40. Yes, the boys and girls of 6M were actually adults back in the classroom for the ultimate back-to-school experiment. Welcome to the most audacious, and hilarious, given the state of the hulking hairy men in schoolboy shorts, exercising the history of the British education system. Class of Mum and Dad is a 3-part series which follows 19 grown-ups, all parents, grandparents or carers of pupils in the school, over a half-term as they go back to school. For a few days every week, they replicate their young charges' daily routines, right down to the school dinners, SAT tests and homework. The adults, who include a legal secretary, a managing director, a percussionist and a physiotherapist, are expected to do everything, right down to sports day. And woe betide them if they haven't brought the correct plimsolls to gym class. The rules are strict: no mobile phones, no running in corridors, no talking back and, yes, really, no bringing sticks and leaves inside. It's not something that has been done before, admits class teacher Kath Mead, who has spent her 15-year teaching career at the school and, until she was faced with a class of oversized pupils, thought she had seen everything. It's a good way of showing the adults what goes on. Most children, when asked what they do at school all day, say, nothing. When the parents drop them off at the door, it's a bit like Narnia, they don't know what's through there. Well, now they do. And it seems that long-suffering Mrs. Mead learned a lesson as well during the process, as the experiment threw up some unexpected issues. She had had pupils flee the class in tears before, but she didn't expect to encounter it on day 1 when a grown woman got into a fluster over a maths test designed to assess where everyone was up to. She got quite emotional, she recalls. No kidding. Julia, 47, ends up sobbing in the dinky toilets. When emotion takes over, you can't help it, says Mrs. Mead. There were other surprises too. Never have so many pupils been so baffled when told they couldn't have a fag break, or considered it their God-given right to saunter out of class for a cup of tea. Tea was the big thing, Mrs. Mead admits. They'd moan that they wanted a brew, and why couldn't they have one? I'd say, you know the rules. Do we have children wandering about with cups of tea? No. She refers darkly to Teagate, when the more rebellious kids let themselves into the kitchen and helped themselves to tea and coffee. While some pupils stunned with their academic ability, Mark, 52, an engineer, is a maths whiz, while Bill, a retired electronics expert, is an astronomy buff. They also stunned with their ability to revert to childish behavior, at speed. I was surprised at how quickly they behaved like 11-year-olds. The fire alarm test was a big revelation. The children know how to behave. 6M were talking over each other. I genuinely wasn't expecting that. There was quite a bit of what we call low-level disruption in class, when I'd be trying to talk and they'd chat about EastEnders or where they were going out. There were other examples of the inner child breaking out that had her stifling giggles. We went on a school trip and they all got excited about having their packed lunches on the bus, the same packed lunches they had in school every day. And the day they discovered that the whiteboards could spin, they loved it. There were 19 in the class, so when they paired up for activities there was one left out. I assumed adults wouldn't have a problem with that, but I had to hastily make a group of 3. The real children were kept in the dark about the identities of the new pupils until the newbies were paraded into the assembly hall. They couldn't believe it. Their jaws dropped, admits Bill, whose grandchildren Jack and Jessica are in years 1 and 6 respectively. The children have lived with Bill and his wife since they lost their mum to cancer. You couldn't ask for a more devoted grandparent. I was already on the board of governors of the school, but when I heard about this experiment I was intrigued, he says. I hadn't appreciated how much schools had changed. At 70, Bill was the oldest pupil to sign up, and his story is extremely touching. At school he suffered from a stammer and got little help. I was that kid who'd have to go to see the headmaster, he admits. I was just a bit disruptive. I got no help, because you didn't then. Now it's completely different. It's so caring. The teachers look out for you. So do the other pupils. I made a whole bunch of new friends. We did form into little cliques, that's natural, I suppose. The yummy mummies, the ones who were friends from the school gates. Bill, ex-territorial army and a stickler for rules, clashed with a pupil called Johnny, 36, a painter and decorator who quickly established himself as the class rebel. He didn't agree with uniforms, homework, or not being allowed to pop outside for a cigarette. We had words, admits Bill. I told him he was letting everyone down when he caused trouble, because the whole class got punished. I thought he was setting a bad example to his son. But we became friendly in the end. Jenny Swindlehurst White, 27, was the youngest in the class. Mum to 5-year-old Darcy, she was apprehensive about taking part, but admits the prospect of a spanking new pencil case did appeal. She loved wearing the uniform too. Some had issues with it. People turned the collars up or rolled the skirts up, which they were told off for. Some of the women had issues with not being allowed to wear much makeup. They let us have simple makeup, but I lost my acrylic nails. Wearing the uniform was brilliant. Getting up in the morning and not having to think, what will I wear? Was liberating. Did she find herself reverting to childhood behavior? Oh, very much so. The minute I put on the uniform and swung the bag over my shoulder, I was back there. The inner child was rekindled. It was lovely. The minute you went into school you were safe, because you were in school. The extent of it was bizarre. I'd get home and flop on the sofa and then remember, oh no, I have to cook tea. Jenny had been a pupil at Blackrod, so the experience was all the more potent for her. First time round, she was shy and lacking in confidence. This time she resolved to do better. All the old feelings did come back, but I made myself talk to other people and not hang back. Since the experiment ended, she has plucked up the courage to leave an NHS job she felt stuck in. I left to sell tractors, she beams. I grew up on a farm and studied agriculture but fell into a job doing clinical coding. At Blackrod I realized there were a lot of people whose jobs didn't pay as well as mine, but they were happier. So I quit. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do so without going back to school. Jenny says her daughter Darcy cried when she broke the news that Mummy would no longer be around to play with her in the playground every lunchtime. She misses the rough and tumble too. It sounds like they all do. It gave us an excuse to run and jump and do cartwheels, she remembers, with great nostalgia. When else can you do that? You'd be ridiculed if you suddenly whipped out a skipping rope in work, wouldn't you? Class of Mum and Dad is coming soon to Channel 4.
Where the freaks at?